Well, thank you very much for inviting me to come here. I am already very well impressed with Exeter, a very beautiful city. I had the chance to walk a little bit around. So, and it's completely different from the kind of cities that we have in Brazil, so it's always good to see how we can organize ourselves in different ways. And, well, I'm going to talk a little bit about it, how we can organize ourselves in different ways to reach something. So, I would like first to give you a little bit of the context. I am an internal medicine specialist. And 12 years ago, 10 years ago, the dean of my university made me a very, I don't know how to put it in words, even more in English, but he made me a proposal, that's what I need to say, to become the responsible for the emergency medicine training at my university. In 3 different workplace environments, the emergency department, the ICU, and also in an internal medicine ward who gives support to the emergency department. And, well, the teacher who was responsible before me retired, and all his team retired with him. So I was alone with 22 students and 20 residents every day, working 14 hours a week, with 2 nocturnal shifts. The same year my first son was born. So what I know about that, what I learned is that my wife really loves me because we're still married until now. So I have this feeling that, well, that's love. That's my definition of love. So I need to start somewhere. When we get there, in Brazil, if the clinicians are prepared to become teachers, we just become teachers because they think we are good doctors and we are going to be good teachers. It happens in other countries in the world, and it happens also in Brazil. So what I had was a completely disorganized way of teaching in the emergency department with different challenges. I don't have time to explore all the challenges and all the initiatives that we developed. So I will focus in one problem. I don't know how many clinical teachers we have here. Maybe you could raise your hands, clinical teachers, someone? Okay, nice, thank you. So let me see if you recognize the situation. One, you ask a question that you know, students know the answer, and nobody give a try. So you stay talking to yourself for the whole morning, trying to get students involved in what you're doing. Do you recognize this problem? So this is the problem that we are going to talk a little bit here today, together with gamification and e-learning. Because what we did is that we used gamification and e-learning as a way to get students engaged in our activities in the real clinical scenario. So they engaged first online, and then they engaged inside with us. So that was our problem. I also need to tell a little bit about our context in Brazil. That's quite different from the context here in Europe. So just you to understand, our students, they start working in the 3rd year of the medical training, doing consultations by themselves. So in the 4th and 5th year, they do deliveries by themselves. In the 6th year, they do a lot of, well, emergency procedures like putting a central line, intubating patients, always with supervision, but by themselves. And where I go right now, most of those procedures are done. Yeah? Okay, for a while. Oh, you need to talk to them. Go
on. Colleagues in Truro, we can hear and we're getting some feedback. Have you got a mute button for your video conference, please? You might have a remote control there with a mute button on it, please.
Here. Over.
2 seconds.
Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you very much. So this is the first issue. The second issue is that they work by themselves as soon as they finish the undergraduate course. 40% of our students do not do residency training. they start practicing by themselves. Most of the time in emergency departments and primary care facilities. So it's a very different kind of reality. And that's our emergency room. We have space to see one patient, but sometimes we see 8 patients at the same time in this very small room. So it's very difficult to teach in an environment like that. That's our observation units in our emergency department. We have a place for 25 people, but sometimes we have 100. Most of the time, between 70 and 80 people being observed in this. Sometimes patients stay here with us for 5 or 6 days. So it's a completely different reality. So what we think happens is that the cognitive load of this environment is high, very high, because students are interacting with peers, teachers, patients, with the multi-professional team. They have to deal with the hierarchy, which not, well, it's around the world the same way, but sometimes they cannot understand quickly who they have to obey to make things happen. They are always with this fear of failure because they know they will be allowed to practice by themselves in a short time. So maybe this lack of engagement, this lack of answers to our questions was not related directly to our interaction, but with this context. That was our hypothesis. And the problem for us is that we cannot afford to have students with low levels of engagement because they are going to practice by themselves. So we need to assure that they are going to engage, they're going to learn what they have to learn in order to be able to practice by themselves at the end of the year. So that was our problem. Another problem is that the number of supervisors that we have. So I will give a small shot of our emergency department. We perform more or less between 100 and 150 consultations. We have 80 patients in observation, and now we have 12 residents and 80 students in this environment. And we are only 3, and sometimes 2. Sometimes, rare times, but it happens, we are only 1 to deal with all of this. So the challenge is a huge challenge, and it's a challenge that is a little bit different from what we have here. But what we have in common we have some expectations about our students. We expect our students to behave like us. Well, I'm not Pelé, and I'm definitely not Neymar as well. Maybe this joke was not so good, but the pictures are nice. So we need to deal with that. We expect students to behave in a certain way. So we expect as teachers most of the time that students will adapt to us and not the other way around. We are going to adapt to students. And then I need to tell a story that what was the day that we decided to move to online learning. I was to start the clinical round at the day, and one of my colleagues came to me and said, Marco, we have a problem today. The students are having this big fight online. They're saying a lot of bad things to each other. They are in this completely chaotic relationship right now. And then I went to the round, and all the students were behaving very nicely to each other, even being more polite than usual. And then we were talking after the ward, and there was the film that was going on at the time. The real students are at home, behind the computer, and we were dealing with those avatars. They behave like students. They are even the best students they can be, but the real students are not there. So what to do with this new generation of virtual natives? I have accounts in social media. Students are my friends. Some patients are my friends as well. I know that here in the UK, it can seem a little bit awkward, in the USA as well. But in Brazil, well, we're a little bit different in terms of relationships with people in general. We touch, we hug. I'm not sure if it's good, but that's the way we do, you know? So we have this new generation of people that's living more online than ever. So they date online, they buy things online, they talk online, they do a lot of things online. And for me, it's quite difficult to understand why they feel comfortable interacting online. But I'm not sure if it's important for me to understand. What's important for me as a teacher maybe is to deal with that in a way that I can take advantage of this new reality. And what intrigues me about online is that you have a different safe code to interact online. I will talk a little bit about the emoticons. If I tell a joke to you right now, you can just misunderstand and get angry with me. I can say to you a really bad story, and you can laugh at my bad story. And I need to understand what's going on, why I am being misunderstood while I'm talking to you. The actors call that scenic intelligence, that is being able to see what you are doing while you're doing and reacting to that. So in the online, you have those magic symbols. It's a joke, then you put something, listen, you hurt me. It's the best joke ever. I am a joker. So we were all the time framing the reaction of your partner in the conversation. So you make sure of your intention while we're talking. So that's one of the things that we believe make students to feel very comfortable online. Because for someone that you do not know very well, maybe it's easier to interact that way. But for us, for our generation, we think about going online as a trap. And there are a lot of research saying that maybe it's a trap. The web designers, they create structures that keep you going all the time to the place that they want you to go. So they measure, today in the BBC One, there was this program about the stress levels when your phone rings and you cannot reach it immediately. So they were measuring the stress levels of the interviewer, and while she was talking and her mobile phone was away from her. And maybe it's also true. It's also something that's happening, and when we are developing online strategies, you should keep it in mind as well. But we want to see the online environment with a different perspective, as a way to connect to students, as a way to get them involved, as a way to help them to deal with the high cognitive load of our workplace environment. So we developed this online strategy. We had two objectives in mind. One was to decrease the cognitive load, because how we are planning that? We only have real clinical cases online, a lot of simulated patients, a lot of problems to solve, clinical problems, but we don't have the interactions with nurses, the interactions with the supervisors, the interactions with the multi-professional team, so we can focus completely on the clinical reasoning process. And what we offer to the students is, if anyone later wants to be more familiar with this strategy, we have created a lot of reasoning paths, reasoning process, to every main complaint that the student can face in the nurse department. And we are not very clear with the students about that, but we solve all the problems the same way, which is quite different from the real world. If you go to Monday, in the shift of Monday, the guy resolves the problem in a way, Tuesday in a different way, Wednesday in a different way. So students can have this feeling of safety, and they can feel the trust, they can trust the material, because we are solving the problems always the same way. So that's why we think that our content decreases the cognitive load. And we are always planning how to motivate students. So the content is developed to motivate students in different ways. I will show to you. So our main activity is what we call virtual rounds. So every week, all the year, we put a new case online on Monday. So we give some information, we ask a question, and then students interact during Monday. Then on Tuesday, we give feedback, we give more information, we ask another question, until we close the case on Friday. And if the students want, they can follow one of those links to get the reference that we used. So we can put a lot of multimedia materials, X-rays, TCs, CTs, MRI, videos of ultrasound, point-of-care ultrasound. We use a lot of point-of-care ultrasound in my department, so we can put everything we want. We have a lot of multiple choice questions with immediate feedback, always a clinical case. So if you are wrong, you know why. If you are right, you know why. We have what we call extreme decisions that are 12 to 14 multiple choice questions in a row to solve the same case, from the admission to the patient in the emergency department until the dismission of the patient in the emergency department. So you need to be right to answer the next one. Well, our students, they get really frustrated about not knowing AKG, how to interpret it, how to deal with that. So we created this AKG challenge. It was funny because we don't have a lot of hypothermia in Brazil. You can imagine why. But one of the students, but we have 2 hypothermia cases in our files. I don't know why also. So the student was in this nocturnal shift in the ICU, and he saw the electrocardiogram of the patient and came to the teacher and said, I think that this patient has hypothermia. The patient was in a shock, and well, the student was right. The patient was 32 degrees. And I think that the patient saved his life because of this hypothermia case on the web. That's just a funny story. And well, the same happens with, that's our tutor. Our platform is in Moodle, so we call Tiago. Let's come back. Because the word world in Portuguese is mundo. That's similar to the word Moodle. So we call Tiago the most beautiful man in the Moodle, because he's the only one. That's the joke. So we also have this radiology challenge. So that's our content. So that's what we get in our first year. We had every student connected for 56 hours in 36 access. That was more than the hours of lecturing in my discipline. My discipline had, at that time, 25 hours of lecturing. We have 2 months with students. 2 months with students, every day for 2 months. So this is the result of 2 months long. And well, I don't have lectures anymore because they are much more time online. So, and they started skipping the classes. We never asked for presence list or something like that, but then suddenly they were not there anymore, so we realized, yeah, they do not need the lectures anymore. I also do not need to give lectures, so let's skip the lectures. So this work was published in the +1, and then, well, we were excited about what we had, then we changed to move it a little bit further. So we decided to go to Facebook with a plan. So our problem is that students have a community because they work together for 2 years in the same group. Well, and we have a community of teachers because we are working together for a long time, now 10 to 12 years. So how to connect? So we developed this guy that is called Já Sinto Bem Melhor. In English, it would be something like feel much better. So we developed this guide to interact with students on Facebook. So the idea is to have the better of each one of the teachers. We need to be funny because for us it is important to have fun. The message will be daily, so the idea is that the character send message to students every time we upload new content. And we upload new content every day, but in different times of the day because of the workload of the tutor. So every time we upload new content, we send a message through Facebook, if the students allow us to do. One of the good things about Facebook is that students are in charge. If you want to receive the message, you receive. If you don't want, you just turn it off and on when you want. So again, the idea was to navigate through Moodle can be quite challenging, so the idea was to create links that facilitate the navigation through Moodle so the student could go directly to the activity they want, so they do not need to follow all the online stuff to get where they want. To create the single community. So that's the design of our web page. So we send this message always with some funny thing, and then the student can click on the top or at the bottom of the message and go direct to the activity they want. So that's the reason behind it. And we also created a kind of developing an identity. So we create those messages in which Jacinto, that is our character, plays with Jacinto Man. We have a list in Spotify for every one of the teachers, so students can access what are the kind of music that we like, we do not like. And Jacinto has always his, we have this, we don't sell anything, okay? But we just create these new products, but they are not for sale. What is, well, maybe you could reconsider that. And we also have a lot of situations of training, like simulation, that we take some pictures and we put online to create this sense of community. And also what happens is that students started to marking Jacinto, who does not exist, in pictures of themselves in different parts of the world. So Jacinto already knows most of Europe, Asia, South America, because he's traveling with the students. So even though students are not studying, I hope not studying during their vacations, they are remembering Jacinto. I'm not sure if it's good, but it's happening, yeah? So that's what we get when we ask the students with questionnaires, what's going on? Oh, I feel more motivated. It's easier to use. It's good to interact with teachers. It's fun. And we have this feeling that we are in a community. So we came, that is one sentence. Phil is our partner, our friend on social media, transforming learning in something funny and natural. It's an example of how studying became more dynamic and enjoyable. That's one of the sentences of the students. And what happened after Facebook was that just because they are being invited to take part in our world, we came from 56 to 85 hours of students using the platform. So it's really powerful. We are considering the possibility of shutting it down because of the number of hours students are spending here, but that's what happened. We have much more engagement online than we had before. Then we had a new problem. We are with this huge number of activities. We have right now more than 1,500 clinical cases in different formats online, because we are doing that for the last 6 or 7 years, and every week we have 1, 2, or 3 new cases. So we have a lot of cases, and students were feeling a little bit lost. So we come up with this idea that was, at the same time, do you have journal clubs here? Students getting together to discuss scientific papers? How many of the students sleep during the activity? You have the one presenting and the other 5 sleeping. Some of them sleeping with open eyes, and few of them sleeping with closed eyes, but they are all sleeping. And we were feeling, well, demotivated by keeping doing that. So we developed a new way of having journal clubs. That was, we give the papers beforehand to students, and we ask them to prepare 2 questions about the papers, 1 to each paper. And then we come together and we divide the students in groups so they can ask the questions to each other. We balance the groups with residents and interns because the activity is done together. And well, we make it funny because we have music when they arrive, like this TV, these awful TV shows, my opinion, sorry, with question, but we do the same. And then suddenly anyone was sleeping anymore. And we need to be careful about choosing the papers because they were memorizing everything. And some papers are not good, so we are working more now because we are being much more careful on selecting the papers because the papers will be read, and we call it Journal Club Challenge. And the best thing is that the winner wins chocolate, good chocolate, and the loser gets chocolate, bad chocolate. But chocolate is always chocolate, so everyone is happy at the end, and they share the chocolate between them, so it's nice. We do not deal, in Brazil, we are not so competitive. I don't know about England, but we are not. In the Netherlands, they are a little bit more. So it becomes a joke at the end. We don't have this feeling that we are, well, winning and someone is losing. We published that initiative in the really good stuff. Let's move. So what we decided to do to deal with that was to play the course. So we created 3 badges. It's as simple as it is. One badge is called Emergency Cool, the other is Emergency Pro, and the other one is Emergency Insane. So the badges have levels, so when you finish level 1, you go to level 2. We open level 2 for you. Oh. And then we open level 3, and then, well, we open a lot of levels. So when you finish 101 activities, you are Emergency Cool, then Emergency Pro, and Emergency Insane. So let's see what happened. It's just it. Follow a study guide and earning a badge at the end, or we publish the badge on Facebook if the student allow us to do so. So that's what happened. Facebook and our game. Just because of virtual badges. I'm still struggling with this. I never played video game in all my life, so a friend of mine used to have a video game, but at the same time, we were in a poor community in Rio. At the same time, there was a goat in front of his house. I prefer to play with the goat than to play with the video game. So I cannot understand this, but that happened. They stay 140 hours online. We don't give grades because of that, any grades. We don't give any kind of reward besides the badge. Well, I don't know why, but it's happening that way. That's the pattern of the study of our students, because as we know now, this is the main source of study of students. So that is the control group. So just to be clear, this is the assessment day. This is expected. Those are the weekends. And this is Friday, the day they study less. That's Facebook, and that's game. So there was an increase in the study just before the tests, but we had also an increase in the study hours along the weeks of the rotation. There is a kind of correlation between the grades and the number of hours they stay logged on. And again, with the questionnaire of gamification, what we got was there is guidance, it's easier to use, there is a sense of competence, it's fun, I feel motivated, and I also feel proud. One of the statements of the students, for a generation that has often been shaped by video games or missions within RPG games, see a study platform following these modes is a great incentive to feel part of it and complete its steps. It encourages us to try to always go a little further. So at the end of the year, we have this celebration because we are Brazilians and we like to party. It's very important for us to party all the time. Not all the time, but well, almost all the time. So we create this ceremony in which we give the badge, that's a piece of paper, for the students. And then the best player is that in the left side. This guy here came from South Carolina, a visiting professor, and he asked us to play Satisfaction with him. He was 20 years without playing the drums, so we were very happy about offering him the possibility of coming back. So my final message is, maybe during designing a curriculum, we should include other perspectives than the learning itself, but things that influence the learning. So one, when we have those small rotations in the clinics right now, students for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, it's quite difficult to create this sense of community. So as a team, how we are planning to feed the sense of community with students so they can really get to us, bringing their issues, asking questions, answering questions, engaging in the activity. How we are going to share with them our identity in a way that this sharing, well, that the students can get the best of sharing this identity with us. Sometimes we are very judgmental with students all the time. How we are going to create the sense of belonging, dealing with the, well, here we are using the community of practice perspective. Students should imagine themselves as one of us, and we need to imagine ourselves as one of them to facilitate the communication between the two groups. How we are going to plan the engagement, that's important. Most of the time what I felt as a student is that teachers were waiting me to get engaged in their stuffs. I understand that, but it does not work quite well most of the time. Because it's difficult for students to understand what is the meaning of what we are doing if we do not share with them. And how we are going to align our goals. Students need to be sure that our goals as teachers are the same goals as their goals. Yeah? And the final thought is what we showed here is a try to get to the world of the students, to understand how they behave, why they behave, what is important for them, but not to stay there with them, to bring them to our world. And I really believe that is something that is responsibility of the teacher. Even more if we're talking about short clinical rotations. When students finally understand what are the rules, what is the atmosphere, how to engage, they move to another rotation. So they don't have enough time to understand what's going on. So I think that we need to go there to bring them to our world. I think that is the main message of this initiative that was quite successful. And I like this initiative very much, but it's this idea of going there to bring them to here. Well, thank you.
Are there any questions for Marco before we go into panel formation? Yes.
Were there any students who didn't get on with the online stuff and who actually prefer lectures and the traditional teaching methods? And what did you do with them if it worked?
When we canceled the lectures, we had...
Could you repeat back the question? Just to
Oh,
make sure
sorry,
we're-
yeah. She asked me what we do when students do not want to engage. Is that correct? And what we do with the students that prefer to engage in the traditional way. Is that? Yeah, yeah. What we do with students that do not engage? Anything. They don't need to engage. They only engage if they want to engage. We are planning to understand who those guys are, and we are planning to do a kind of qualitative research to understand why they do not engage. So to take the bottom 5 of engagement with the top 5 of engagement, and to understand why for a group is really nice to interact in a way like that, and for them what's not. But what happens that because most of them are engaging, the atmosphere of learning changed completely. So we are, just to give an example, in the last 6 years, one of the guys of my team was at least once the name of the class. We have two ways of to thank a professor in Brazil. You can be the name of the class, or you can be the teacher award, something like that. So in 4 years, both places were from two guys of this team. So the atmosphere for the students right now is quite closed. So it started online, but now it's going on site. When we stopped giving lectures, two students came to us really mad. We need lectures. But I said, you were not attending to the lectures. So why you want lectures if you, the two of them, they were not coming, because I knew. And I said, well, why you want lectures if you do not come? So we realized that what they want was a guidance for the tests. So when they realized that the online platform was giving them the elements necessary to succeed on the texts, they were okay. But it was only in the first year, then we didn't have that anymore.
That was a great talk.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. And I've enjoyed that a lot, and it resonates with quite a lot of work that I've been involved with here with my colleague Kevin, doing some IT work into the program, and actually using Facebook and Spotify and so on. We're starting to think about pulling the lectures out of our program as well, but we've got some anxiety about that community of practice, losing the people being next to each other, eyeballing each other, and sort of becoming friends and developing sort of a cohort for resilience when they're older and so on. So did you have any, so what we're doing actually, we're going to try and bring the cohort together about every 3 weeks, just to sort of try and protect that. But did you have any, I don't know if, it looks like you've got a lovely community of practice there with a lovely sort of friendly, very democratic sort of school, but did you have any anxieties about that, or how did you address that?
I'm not sure if I understood what is your concern.
My concern is, did you lose anything by taking the lectures away?
Okay, yeah. I don't think so, to be short. To be long, our lectures were clinical case discussions most of the time. And teachers are connected with students every day. So we don't need the time of the lectures to connect, because we are connected to them in the real clinical task. So I think that we do not lose anything, but to be honest, I think that it will depend on your context. What I think is that it's very important to plan the engagement beforehand, and not just let it happen. And the engagement for me needs to be on-site and online. I don't think that engaging online can, well, replace completely engaging on-site.
I'm just going to give you the mic just to make sure that True.
Oh, I forgot again, sorry.
Hi. So I thought that what you did was really, really interesting, and you showed us the statistics for increased usage of those, but I was wondering whether you found any difference in their exam results after that.
We had an increase in the median grade of the students. We have a multidimensional assessment. So our assessment has cognitive assessment with multiple choice and open-ended questions. We have an OSCE exam with only 5 stations. And we develop a kind of global rating scale, because we stay with students for 2 months. So we really know them every day for 2 months. So we have this global rating scale with 3 factors, that is professionalism, empathy, and what is the last one? Clinical skills. So what happens that the cognitive tests, we have higher grades because of the platform. When we compare, we have the same tests for all the cohorts. So it increased. But the grades for the attitudes in the workplace did not change. The OSCE changed as well. We had higher grades in the OSCE, higher grades in the cognitive test, but the grades in the global rating scale did not change.
Any questions from Truro? I know your mic's off at the moment. Don't feel any pressure.
No?
We're all ready.
Can we just say that we've also really enjoyed your talk down here, and echo what our colleague Ian Fussell was just saying, and the community of practice is something that we are very keen on in the sort of equality between students and staff. And we've seen the benefits of it down here ourselves as well in a very informal way. But could you remind us of at what point in their training are they engaging with this process?
Yeah, they engage with us for 2 months in the last year. Can be at the beginning of the last year or at the end. It depends because it's a kind of rotation. So students are in different places at the same time. So they stay with us in the last year for 2 months. They already are a community between themselves. That's what the information that is important. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your talk. I was very interested to see the very first slides about the community in Brazil, about the crowdedness and the high anxiety. So I'm interested to know how your students will then cope with the resilience that is needed, having gone through the kind of fun, entertaining, engaging virtual world to a real world that probably isn't as fun as it is. So how do you build that resilience through this process?
We have a concept there that we call, I'm not sure if it's an academic word, so you forgive me, because it seems that you understand a lot about that. We call that collective resilience. That is the resilience that comes from the group. And we have a very different way of interacting with patients as well. It's not in Brazil, it's about, now I'm talking about this group of physicians that work together. So we involve patients a lot, so just our clinical rounds, the patients take part in the clinical round. So when we make jokes with the patient and not about the patient, as it happens in a lot of parts of the world. So we do that all together, so the patients feel part of it as well. They say to us, oh, we're waiting for the moment of the round because we know that we will have this opportunity to interact all together and to have a little bit of fun. Again, it's important. And what we make clear for the students is that we are learning all of that to help patients and not, we are allowed to have fun because, well, you need to have fun with the work that you do, I think. It's important to feel rewarded and fulfilled by what you do, but it has an objective that is the patient. So we have, it's not here, but we have a simulation activity completely devoted to teach empathy or to address empathy, to discuss empathy. It is very famous right now at my school and also in other parts of Brazil. It has a completely different kind of debriefing. Our debriefing takes 4 to 5 hours. So we still 4 or 5 hours discussing what happened in the simulated encounter with patients. We develop cases only to address emotions. So all our patients bring emotions to the table. So all the activity is planned to that. And it also creates a feeling of community because students say to us, we didn't have the opportunity to discuss emotions for all the course. So I changed myself towards a person that I do not recognize. And then because of you, we are being able to come back to what we planned when we decided to become doctors. So it's more than that, that's one part, but I think that this feeling of belonging and of fulfillment, it's fundamental to foster resilience. That's my feeling. It's very difficult to work in that place. We have frustrations every 5 minutes. When I started, the ventilator that we used was from the 40s. Korea War. It took me 5 years to convince the administration of the hospital to buy ventilators, microprocessed ventilators. Now all our ventilators are microprocessed. We have non-invasive ventilation, point of care ultrasound. But it took me, not me, it took the group 5 or 6 years to make it happen. So it still is, but it was worse. So for the team, we have this feeling that we are improving, which also fosters resilience as well.
Marco, I wonder if we could introduce you to some other colleagues now and ask our panel to come up and join the conversation.
Yep.
And once they're established, we'll ask them to introduce themselves to you and to the audience. I think they know who they are. And I think we need to use microphones, don't we? So we'll get Ian, you're looking very relaxed.
You want me to be up there?
Yeah.
Am I up there? Sorry.
I was thinking there was a gap. But I'm not
Is it you? Is it you?
He's got his boots on.
Oh, on the panel, I didn't know.
Do you want some water?
Please.
Do you want some water?
Just go along and introduce ourselves. And then Catherine is going to shuttle with the microphone, so we made sure that Truro can definitely hear the questions. So my name's Karen Mattick, I'm Professor of Medical Education here. I don't have a particular role in relation to learning technologies, but I'm very interested in what you talk about, particularly in relation to community and how that interacts with education, learning and education.
Thank you. So I'm Lisa Alberici, I'm here from the Academic Development Team at Exeter. I have particular interests in building supportive and inclusive communities of practice. And I'm also the director of the Learning and Teaching in Higher Education programme, so that's the one that our PGRs who teach need to do. So I do get to work with a lot of very early career teachers in higher education, so I've been particularly interested, especially what you're saying about bringing fun. That's definitely something that resonated with me.
Nice.
Well, I'm Ian Fussell, I'm the Community Sub-Dean based in Truro for the medical school and the Clinical Special Study Unit Lead. We have a Spotify playlist at our lectures. The students curate themselves. We've had a few bands down there. I play the bass guitar. The students have come to my gigs. So I know where you're coming from. I'm also with Kevin, well Kevin does it really, but between us we run an MSc module on the use of IT in teaching. And well, Kevin is an expert on gamification and use of IT. Yes, he is. He's being very modest, but it's fantastic. But we really, we really did like the gamification you put through the curriculum. It's good and it was a bit food for thought for our own development. So that's why I'm thinking.
So I'm Jack McArthur. I'm a integrated medical student, probably the most novice person in the room, bar Jess. But having done the digital teaching in digital world module on the masters, and then throughout my experience of uni and it all being pretty online and slowly moving towards much more that way, which was in complete contrast to all the other education which I've had, which is all very here's your textbook, read it, do questions 5 to 6. And how much more fun and engaging online stuff can be, and it's something that I found very interesting.
So I guess any questions, so continue the discussion and then we can feed it to the right person.
Hi there, my name's Marie Arimar and I'm the coordinator for the postgraduate genomic medicine programme. One of the things that we're looking at is appealing to international students by having a truly online programme, so not as we have now, which is recapped lectures and people to go on and watch those. And I'm just wondering what you think, Marco, about the fact that we would be probably going to older people, older than the age group you're possibly talking to, because they'll be clinical practitioners and they may be from, multiple countries. So I just wondered what you thought about, transferring what you're doing, which looks amazing, into our needs for that.
I think that, yeah, it's over here. And then, when it comes to lectures online, that's the first part of your question. Lectures are very boring. I gave this lecture here and I could feel the moments that you were all disengaged, and some of the moments that some of you were engaged, and the rare moments when most of you were engaged. So it's quite difficult to make a lecture engaging. When you are speaking your second language, it can be even worse, because you lose your time for jokes. Jokes are a good way to engage audiences, and when you were speaking a second lecture, I'm just saying that because you were planning to give the lectures for non-native English speakers. So it's difficult to engage in lectures everywhere. Online can be worse because you lost a lot of your body language, which is quite important also to engage. You lose your eye contact, you lose the understanding of the audience and the real-time reaction to the audience, because you can change what you're thinking. So engaging in a lecture online is even more difficult than to engage in a lecture on site. So what we can do? I think that what we can do is to make the lectures really short, and in a way that the student or the trainee or whoever is going to use know in advance what's there. And then if you promise that you will deliver coconuts, put the coconuts in the first 5 seconds. Don't wait too long, and too long in the web can be 20 seconds, 1 minute. And my sister works for an online company in Brazil, and she said that most of the time people still engage in videos for 2.5 minutes. So maybe if you are very willing to follow a lecture, you can be engaged for 5 minutes. But the good news is, the ones who survive to the 5 minutes, most of the time they go, that's what I know about that. So make it short, make it clear, make it concise. Is it a good way to establish a community? I'm not sure. There are a lot of instruments in the web that can be more powerful than lectures. What I believe is the future in terms of training people online is to have online communities of practice. You'll be smart enough to build trust with your colleagues that are going to use the community. I will give you an example. My brother works for Schlumberger, which is a French company in the oil field. And he told me that he was in a meeting talking to a client here in UK, and the guy asked him a question, and he didn't have the data immediately, so he went to his mobile phone and put the question online, and in less than 30 seconds, 1 minute, he had much more information than the client, because the online community of Schlumberger gave him all the information, and it's happening with a lot of different companies around the world. So I think that we could try to do the same.
We've been, well, Julie might be able to answer this question as well, but we've been going through the process of moving our lectures into sort of small 10-minute sort of online lectures with a company, and it's had some unexpected benefits. Well, the first thing is that the quality goes up, so the lecturers are sort of making much more concise their material, but also they come in with a sense of dread and leave with a sense of accomplishment, because there's actually a product that they're quite proud of. And we've not put any training into those people, so this is a very sort of basic sort of entry sort of level. So that's been a good process. What was something else you said? I can't remember the other part. I was going to another comment, but it will come back to me. Sorry. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you. So I was thinking just about, if we think about a blended learning provision that is moving more online, And just really echoing there about, therefore, using the face-to-face interactions for what that works best with. So everything you do face-to-face is about eye contact, it is about needing that kind of interaction, and then using the online elements for the things that would work better there. So, for example, one of the things that we like to model in the academic development team is none of our online videos are more than 5 minutes long, because you just will lose your audience in that way. And so it doesn't mean that you can't have no more than 5 minutes, you just need to break it up with other activities and things as well. I think one of the challenges for a wholly online programme is creating that community of practice online, and I think that there's work being done within our own technology enhanced learning team about how you might be able to do that using things like Skype, using things like Facebook, but using sort of discussion boards